One day at the airport, on my way back from work, I ran into an old classmate. It was a guy named Ethan who had persistently harassed me from 6th to 9th grade. Because of Ethan, I was driven to drop out of high school. Even as an adult, Ethan hadn't changed. Seeing me, he immediately demeaned me, calling me a dropout, a loser. For a moment, I almost lost my cool, but I managed to contain my anger and left the scene. Later, Ethan and I would cross paths again at the airport. "Hey, dropout! This is what a plane looks like!" Ethan sneered at me. When it became apparent that I was the pilot, Ethan's reaction was unexpected. My name is Oliver, 38 years old, single, and a pilot by profession. When I mention my career, it sounds like I've had an impressive history, but in reality, I once dropped out of high school. Between 6th and 9th grade, I suffered from persistent harassment. The root of my trouble started with a falling out with Ethan, my classmate. Ethan was extroverted, friendly, and well-liked by everyone. I, on the other hand, was serious and decent at studies, but not so good at socializing. That's why I was so relieved when Ethan approached me soon after I enrolled, worried whether I would make any friends. Our conversation started because we had both been in the same soccer club when we were in elementary school. Additionally, Ethan and I joined the soccer team together. We both joined the soccer team, but in our group, I was always the butt of the jokes. Ethan had a charm in turning even my inability to counter the teasing into a source of laughter, which was as cruel as it was captivating. Initially, I accepted my place in the group, even finding joy in making others laugh with my actions. But slowly, our relationship became twisted. The way we garnered laughs escalated gradually. At first, I dismissed it as part of friendship, but my ambiguous attitude towards these jokes was a mistake. The words gradually turned into blatant teasing and personal attacks. Sometimes Ethan would half-joking put me in a wrestling hold. Even when I laughed it off and told him to stop, no one intervened. Instead, they all laughed, watching Ethan and me. I'm not making them laugh. I'm being laughed at, I realized. Ethan was just enjoying humiliating me. That realization made staying in the group painful. The teasing that I once brushed off with a laugh became unbearable. One day, while walking down the hallway, I was slapped on the head with the usual, "Hey!" Normally, I would just laugh it off with a "What's up?" But that day, I firmly said, "Stop it!" Ethan, looking annoyed, retorted, "What's with you lately? You getting all moody? I'd let you in our group, so at least look like you're having fun." "Can't do that. It's not fun." "What? You always used to laugh. Besides, for someone named Oliver, you're getting too bold." Ethan said this with an intimidating voice, glaring at me. But I stood my ground, staring back at him. Ethan eventually left saying, "Fine then," and quickly joined the rest of his group. From the next day, my life became a living hell. At school, Ethan and the others he'd influenced, even classmates not involved, started ignoring me. It would have been better if it had ended at that, but they soon began actively harassing me, with Ethan as the ringleader. At first, I tried to stay strong, showing up at school and extracurricular activities, but the pain soon became unbearable, and I started skipping both. Entering 8th grade with the added stress of adolescence, their behavior became even more intense. I missed nearly half of 8th grade, and naturally my grades and evaluations plummeted. I was once considered for a renowned private school in the state during 7th grade, but now I was barely managing to qualify for a lesser-known private school. Still, I tried to study, hoping to escape the situation by graduating middle school. However, things didn't go as planned, and to my dismay, I ended up in the same public school as Ethan. In middle school, I had some respite because Mr. Brown, my 7th grade English teacher, took an interest in my situation. He even reprimanded Ethan and his group. But high school was relentless. Hoping to build new relationships in high school, I unfortunately found myself in the same class as Ethan.
"Oh, it's Oliver!"
Ethan declared as I entered the classroom, grabbing my collar and announcing in front of everyone.
"Let's all tease this guy. He's always been the one to get picked on since middle school. He enjoys it, right?"
Initially, my classmates were unsure, but once they decided I was an easy target, they became merciless. Unlike middle school, there were no teachers to protect me. Eventually, my spirit broke and I found myself unable to go to school. Failing to meet the credit requirements, I was held back a year, and that's when I dropped out of high school. The person who tried to save me was Mr. Brown, my middle school mentor. He was the only teacher who noticed my plight and reached out. Not only did he scold Ethan and his group, but in my final year, he provided his English prep room as a refuge from Ethan's torments. I would go to the English prep room after school every day to talk to Mr. Brown. During my struggling 8th grade, he even taught me one-on-one. Sadly, despite Mr. Brown's efforts, Ethan's behavior never changed. Still, I believe Mr. Brown did everything he could. He was my only ally and emotional support at school. Just having Mr. Brown around made it possible for me to attend school until graduation. I kept in touch with Mr. Brown through frequent letters even after graduation. But as the situation in high school remained unchanged and my spirit was broken, I lost the motivation to go to school and didn't feel like replying to Mr. Brown's letters, leaving them unanswered. One day, Mr. Brown came to my house to apologize in person.
"I'm truly sorry I couldn't be more helpful back then,"
he said with a pained expression. When he learned I couldn't attend high school anymore, he brought a pile of information on correspondence and night schools.
"How about starting over in a new environment?"
he suggested. "It's no use, I replied. My self-esteem shattered from being constantly ridiculed by Ethan and his group. Mr. Brown encouraged me.
"Oliver, you'll be fine. With a change of environment, you'll flourish,"
pushed by his enthusiasm. I started studying for my high school diploma through correspondence education. Originally, I didn't hate studying, and with the active support of my parents and Mr. Brown, I made significant progress, contrary to my past struggles. Frustrated by how I had broken under harassment, I immersed myself in studies, refusing to let those bullies ruin my life. During that time, my parents told me,
"It's great that you're always working hard on your studies, but it's not good to focus too much on them."
To give me a break, they took me on a trip. That was when I flew on a plane for the first time. The first surprise was the plane's imposing presence before boarding. I remembered how I used to love looking at aircraft in vehicle encyclopedias as a child. Flying through the air, I was completely captivated by the world above. The gradually fading cityscape, the thrill of breaking through clouds, and the clear sky beyond. The beauty of the scenery through the plane's small window made me feel free from everything. It was so refreshing that it seemed to erase all the regrets and burdens of the past.
"I want to fly freely in the sky. I want to be a pilot."
This vague thought solidified into a firm goal by the time I returned from the trip. It was the first time I had a dream, and I felt my heart leap for the first time in a long while. However, becoming a pilot is not an easy path. It would also be a burden on my parents. But I didn't want to give up on something again. While I was wrestling with these thoughts, Mr. Brown visited me again.
"Look at you! Oliver, you seem much brighter."
He immediately noticed the change in me.
"How's your studying going?"
he asked.
"It's going really well lately,"
I replied.
"I've found a goal."
Mr. Brown looked at me encouragingly. Would he laugh? Would he say it's impossible for me? For a moment, these thoughts crossed my mind, but I knew Mr. Brown wouldn't say such things. Gathering my courage, I said,
"I've been thinking. I want to become a pilot."
Mr. Brown's eyes widened, and tears quickly filled them. Seeing his face break into a joyful smile, I almost cried too.
That's great! I'll support you. Finding a goal is great. Keep it up.
Mr. Brown said with a trembling voice, taking my hand. His words cemented my resolve. I then shared my aspiration to become a pilot with my parents. Mom seemed a bit worried, but Dad said,
That's great! You've seemed much more determined lately. So that's what it was all about. Dad will support you all the way.
Mom nodded in agreement, saying, Yes, that's right. I studied hard, passed the high school equivalency exam and the aviation school entrance exam. I worked diligently in my studies and training at the aviation school and eventually obtained my pilot's license. But I didn't stop there. Aiming to become an even better pilot, I won a scholarship for a master's program in Germany and studied advanced aviation technology there. My paper on the impact of lateral forces caused by aircraft tire damage received higher acclaim than I expected, paving the way for my doctoral studies. After earning my PhD, I finally felt a sense of achievement. I considered staying abroad for work, but with my parents waiting back home, I decided to return. Back home, I got a job as a pilot with an airline in New York. One day, while walking to the airport exit in my casual clothes, a man in dirty work clothes called out,
Oliver!
I recognized the face immediately and was momentarily speechless. It was Ethan, the same person who cruelly mistreated me from 6th to 9th grade.
What's up? Long time no see. Ended up a high school dropout, loser, huh? Why are you even here? Well, I guess you're probably a janitor or something, right? Got anything to say? Dropout, Mr. Oliver.
I was traumatized, forgetting where I was, my mind going blank. Ethan's tone, attitude, and expression brought back memories of those hellish school days. Amused by my stunned state, Ethan boastfully mentioned that he now worked here as a mechanic. He obviously thought I was a janitor, his demeanor openly dismissive. It seemed like he had no remorse for almost breaking me as a person. You have no idea of the pain you caused me. I almost lost my composure, but managed to contain my anger at the last moment, saying only,
I see. Good luck.
Before quickly leaving. My heart was pounding long after Ethan was out of sight. Later, when the shock had somewhat subsided, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in a while. It was Mr. Brown. He had heard about my achievements and, inspired, decided to pursue his long-abandoned dream of graduate studies. He had finally been accepted to a prestigious university in the UK. As I joyfully congratulated Mr. Brown, he said,
I have a favor to ask. I want to fly to the UK on a plane piloted by Oliver. Of course, sir.
I responded eagerly. I then made arrangements to ensure that I would be the pilot on Mr. Brown's flight. And then, the day of Mr. Brown's departure arrived. It was a very cold day, and I, in my captain's uniform with a jacket over it, was walking around the aircraft for an external inspection. That's when I encountered Ethan again. Everyone was at their respective post, and there were no other people around Ethan and me. Ethan, seeing me, mockingly swung a tool as if to hit me and laughed.
Hey!
I flinched, and he said with the same childishness as before,
What? Got scared? It's just a joke. Hey, dropout! This is an airplane,
he said mockingly. Just then, a voice from behind me called out, Captain! It was Miss Anderson, a cabin attendant.
Captain?
A surprised Ethan was ignored as Miss Anderson looked straight at me. Captain, it's time for the flight. Please prepare.
What?
Understood. I'll be right there. Leaving a stunned Ethan behind, I quickly walked towards Miss Anderson. Ethan clicked his tongue behind me, but I felt a sense of satisfaction, as if I had finally outdone him. Soon it was time to board, and passengers began entering the aircraft one after another. spotting Mr. Brown among them. I couldn't help but smile. Once all the passengers were seated and the hatch was closed, I introduced myself as the captain and promised a safe journey to everyone on board. I knew Mr. Brown would hear my voice. As a captain, I felt even prouder to be in this position. Ethan in those times were long past. I can't forget the humiliation of those days, but I'm not the same person I was back then. Reminding myself of this, I prepared for takeoff and the plane safely lifted off. However, there was an unexpected event mid-flight. As the control tower reported a sudden change in weather, the aircraft was hit by a terrifying storm. The aircraft shook violently, an extraordinary turbulence. Panic ensued in the cabin, and amidst the chaotic reports in my headphones, I felt a moment of confusion. But my more than a decade of experience wasn't for show. Moreover, the situation was similar to what I had written about in my paper. "Stay calm, it's okay, I can handle this," I reassured myself. Working together with the co-pilot and cabin attendants, we secured the safety of the aircraft and calmed the panic. Eventually, we managed to escape the critical situation, and the aircraft gradually stabilized. Seeing the airport and successfully landing felt like a huge relief. But my job wasn't over yet. As the captain, I apologized for the incident and wished success for all passengers and crew members, completing my duties. Of course, the image of a certain mentor was in my mind throughout. Some time later, the details of the malfunction that troubled the aircraft were revealed. A part in a specific area was found to be damaged. Despite thorough double checks, it was unclear why the maintenance had been inadequate. When the authorities analyzed the camera footage, it was discovered that the malfunction was due to Ethan's actions. It was a case of deliberate tampering. Initially, Ethan denied the accusations, but when he saw me, his face flushed. Observing his strange reaction, the others turned their attention to me. I briefly explained the background of my relationship with Ethan.
"It's all in the past. Why are you still holding on to it? That's why you're foolish,"
I blurted out unintentionally, and Ethan seemed to realize he had cornered himself. He tried to deny it in a panic, but it was too late. Everyone present cast condemning glances at him. I'm no longer the weak person I was back then. Looking Ethan in the eye, I said,
"You're the one who's been holding on to the past. Your actions could have cost lives. Do you realize the magnitude of what you've done?"
Following my words, others started to express their criticisms towards Ethan. Pale and shrinking, Ethan eventually broke down and apologized, but that didn't absolve him of his crimes. Having admitted his guilt, Ethan was disciplined and resigned, facing criminal charges. What Ethan did, both in the past and now, is inexcusable. However, I couldn't help but feel a certain pity for him, driven to such lengths by his obsession with pulling me down. A few days later, perhaps by some stroke of luck, I found myself dining with Miss Anderson. She had asked me, "Would you like to have dinner together on our next day off?" Miss Anderson, always a cool beauty as an excellent cabin attendant, looked even more stunning in her casual attire. I had secretly been attracted to her for a long time, but had almost given up, thinking she couldn't possibly be interested in me, being 8 years younger. However, our relationship rapidly grew closer after that incident.
Is this the suspension bridge effect? No, maybe it's something different.
While thinking this and eating, Miss Anderson said, "You were really impressive the other day, Mr. Oliver." I was at a loss for words, and she chuckled softly.
What do you mean?
"When there was trouble, he gave calm instructions. Thanks to you, I was able to stay composed and act. It was admirable." Her compliments made me blush.
But involving many people in my problem with Ethan, I feel...
"That modesty of yours is also admirable, you know."
Are you teasing me?
"Of course not." Miss Anderson smiled, holding her hand to her mouth, looking genuinely happy. Her surprising actions didn't end there. "I'm the type who actively shows interest when I like someone," she said. I was stunned, feeling my face turn red. After that, Miss Anderson and I started dating. Although we both often find ourselves in the sky or abroad due to our jobs, she was always eager to travel to foreign countries in our private time. Since I also love flying, traveling together became a very enjoyable experience. France, Sweden, Vietnam, Australia. Together, we created many memories in various places. Each journey seemed to heal the scars in my heart. Soon, I plan to propose to her. I intend to invite Mr. Brown to our wedding, believing it's a strange fate he has somehow connected for us. That's the feeling I have.